As kids, there are always games we want to play, but depending on how cool our parents are, they won't let us. For example, when I was in middle school, GTA 5 had just come out, and my parents would never let me play it. At the time, I didn't know that it wasn't on Wii U anyway, but the fact that I was still told no made me mad. Instead, I got Batman Arkham City Armored Edition for Christmas, and I loved it. What kid doesn't love Batman? To my 12-year-old brain, this was the coolest and darkest video game I had ever played. I felt like such a badass in a way I had never felt in a video game. So when Arkham Knight was coming out when I was in high school, and I had a laptop to play it on, I immediately went to my parents asking for it. They checked the age rating as they normally do, but fate had a cruel twist in store for me. It was age restricted. This made no sense. I had played all 3 of the previous games and none of them were R-rated. Why was I being denied my Batman power fantasy? So I bitterly waited until I turned 16. At that point, I was profoundly disappointed with the game compared to its predecessors, but I'm not here to talk about that. I want to talk about what content within Arkham Knight made it worthy of an R rating above games like Asylum, City, and Origins. So we open the game up on a graphic cremation of a body at a highly close-up angle, and this is followed by a section that ends with us playing as a drug-induced police officer gunning down civilians. Maybe I see how the rating board got off on the wrong foot here. People have died in the Arkham games before this, but there's a certain no-Russian element to doing it this way. It's a lot more disturbing to pull the trigger yourself, especially if you know this is all a hallucination, and only the most naive of players won't be able to figure that out. Where previous Arkham games had eerie and grand intros that set up the tone and atmosphere of the adventure, Knight comes straight out the gate with innocent people ripping each other to shreds, which signals the louder and more explosive tone of this finale. Either way, if Arkham Knight had been in development during the 2020 riots, I think we can safely say this section would have been scrapped. It comes off as a really dark and provocative opening to a game that doesn't really have anything nearly as morbid for the rest of its runtime. I wonder if age rating boards take the intro of a game into account more than the content or ending of it, as this is the only section every player is guaranteed to witness. If this section was somewhere later in the game, would this have been lowered to a PG age rating? After this bombastic intro, I was struggling to find many other smoking guns that could have led to such an extreme rating. While characters swear, they never drop an F-bomb. Hell, they censor it by yelling, "It's the freaking Bat! Get him!" If I had to guess, while that opening did a lot of the heavy lifting, it would probably be the torture scenes or the implied torture scenes of Jason Todd. And while nothing is shown, it's incredibly creepy how scared he is as he begs to be rescued by Bruce. And then you can feel your stomach churn as in the next scene, he's completely broken and ready to serve the Joker unconditionally. While there's no way Rocksteady could have ever shown the torture, just leaving it to our imaginations is horrifying enough. I also think the Scarecrow's visual design helped raise the age rating. Sometimes I forget that it's not a mask anymore, and that Crane took a knife to his face and disfigured himself even further to become this symbol of fear. While Batman villains have always been psychotic, I think their gimmicks have helped to hide the disturbed trauma that's actually behind their fractured bodies and psyches. Compare Two-Face in the Arkham games, where he has the split personality disorder, to his version in The Dark Knight, where he's played realistically. Both versions feature dark interpretations of the character, but the one without the fun of the comics is the more sickening one. Scarecrow and Arkham Knight aren't playing around. They don't have a gimmick like Venom or coin flips, they're not ninjas or ice cyborgs, and they don't have comical voices or mannerisms like Penguin and the Riddler. They're just two deeply hateful and deeply disturbed men who want to torture everyone in the entire world. While that's the same character type as the Joker, he disguises it all under layers of comedy and perverted glee that distracts us from the pure hatred he has inside his heart. It makes him more entertaining to watch, and indeed more terrifying, but it's easy to forget that he hates the world just as much as any Batman villain. But if there's one last nail in the coffin for why Arkham Knight deserves an R rating above its previous installments, it's got to be a moment that, while short in this iteration, is still disgusting no matter what media it's portrayed in. The Killing Joke is what happens when the Joker goes too far, when he deliberately goes over the line so far that he's daring Batman to kill him. And while by the mercy of Dr. Manhattan, he leaves after shooting Barbara, having to watch her lie on the floor paralyzed is an awful feeling, especially since we know she's going to be there for hours. It feels like a violation of all that is sacred. I'm glad to see this scene fully animated for the first time, but there's no world in which the most depraved act in fiction is committed and the game isn't slapped with a massive R rating. Batman Arkham Knight probably deserves to be age restricted, and while kids like me were robbed of continuing the story, I can appreciate how Batman matured with its audience all the way back from the animated series. I'll be back in 2 days. In the meantime, here's a video about Harley's inconsistent characterization in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.